Yeah, what is going on, everybody? It is yours truly, the Ace, here with episode 3 of season 2 of Behind the Teams, and we are focusing on the Washington Commanders. And I got Stoner from Ref the District on with me today to talk about his Washington Commanders. How you doing today, man?
Hey, awesome. Appreciate you having me on, Ace. I love the content that you're putting out, so I'm happy to be on your channel with you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And this is our first time meeting. You being a Commanders fan, like I told you off screen, I am a Giants fan. So,
Yeah.
NFC East rivals, it's good to have conversation with the rivals. But, I don't really dislike you guys like we dislike the other teams, like the Eagles and the Cowboys. You know what I'm saying? So,
We do have a mutual dislike for the other teams, but make no mistake, the Giants are up there in the dislike department here for the Commanders fans. They're way up there. Not
oh,
as
yeah.
high as the Cowboys, not quite as high as the Eagles, but again, the third highest of any team in the NFL.
So, who actually do you hate more, the Eagles or the Cowboys?
Because we're so close to Philadelphia, it seems like that we would have a higher hatred because we can go up there so easily and they can come down here so easily. But I mean, the Cowboys have always been the most hated team in the NFL. They seem to be the most loved team as well, but the Cowboys are probably at the top of the list.
Exactly. Yeah, their fan base is obnoxious. But
Yeah,
anyways,
they are.
that could be a whole different video on top of that. So we're
Yeah.
here to talk about the Washington Commanders 2023
Mm,
season.
mm.
Kind of a disappointing one, 4-13 record. Obviously, you guys finished fourth in the division. What were your thoughts overall on that season?
Yeah, well, disappointment is an understatement. It was an abject disaster, Ace. I mean,
Mm,
when you take a look at what we were expecting going into the season, we had Ron Rivera in his fourth year, and he had talked about building, building, building. And we had Sam Howell, who was coming off. He only had one start the previous year, but it was the final start of the year against the Cowboys. His very first pass he threw was a touchdown to Terry McLaurin. So
mhm.
there were high hopes for Sam Howell. They bring in Eric Bieniemy to be the offensive coordinator. So the excitement level was really at a pitch. I mean, it is for most teams in most off seasons, right? You have this expectation, this hope. But last year was really kind of the pinnacle of where this organization has been the past 4 years. The biggest change that we were excited about is Dan Snyder finally sold the team.
Mm.
And we thought, okay, if you thought there was a curse, that's gone. If you thought that the owner got meddled too much into the business of football operations, that's gone. So that was just this new feeling. The training camp was redone, the facilities and the training camp was redone, and it was just a great vibe going into training camp. Team started 2-0, beat the Cardinals and the Broncos, and all of a sudden we're thinking, okay, this is going to be different. And then it turned into an absolute disaster. And they ended up going 2-17 the rest of the year, 2-13, sorry, to get to that 4-13 record, and lost 8 in a row at the end. It was such a failure, Ace. It was so disappointing. Everyone gets blown out, the coaching staff, a bunch of players are gone, and man, you couldn't have a bigger disparity from what we expected to happen at the beginning to what actually happened. It was disaster is the best word for it.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. All right, so since you brought up the topic of Dan Snyder, I'd be
Mhm.
remiss if I didn't ask, how do you personally feel about the name that you guys have? Like, because I always try to ask the Washington Commander fans, like, how do they
Yeah.
actually feel about it? Obviously, we know they had to change the name, and Snyder was kind of against it. How do you feel about the Commanders, and is that something that you want to continue to go forward with, or you think there needs to be a name change?
I'm not I'm not married to the name. I don't really
Hmm.
care too much about the name. If we can't have the name Redskins, then fine, we can't have that. But that's the only name that everybody can kind of get around and be on the same side. But there is no sort of name that's out there that everybody wants. All the polls that they put out, for wherever you see the polls, there's no leader in the clubhouse. The top leader is going to be like at 17% of the poll fan voting. So there's nothing out there that everybody says we need to change the name to the Red Hogs or we need to change the name to the Red Wolves or something. There's nothing like that out there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what name it is, everybody's the majority of people are going to hate it. So the biggest thing for me is it doesn't matter what the name is as long as the team starts to win.
Yeah.
And if the team starts to win, everybody's going to jump on board of the Commanders
Yeah.
and they're going to be fine with the name. But for so long, or at least, the last couple of years, for so long, it was, well, that's a terrible name. This is a terrible team. So let's complain about the name because we're complaining about everything else. If the team wins, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody will talk about it. They'll be the Commanders forever, and we'll go down in history as one of the great franchises, or we'll go back to history and be one of the great franchises again. But it was one of those things to where the corporate sponsors forced Dan's hand to change it right at the very end of his ownership time, and he did change it. And Commanders is boring. It's nothing exciting, but it is what it is. It's the name. So let's all jump on board in terms of fans, and let's hopefully we win. Not talk about the name ever again.
Yeah, understandable. I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of partial to the football team.
Yeah, that wasn't bad, right? That
Yeah,
wasn't bad.
because it reminded me of if you were talking to somebody that never watched football and you're like the Washington football team, they're like, what football team? Like, what are you like? They're expecting a name, but that is the name. Like, you could have just kept it at that, and people would have got used to that. But I understand the logic, the thinking behind it as far as changing the Redskins name. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've done it all around, sports. The Indians became the Guardians, stuff like that. So it's understandable. So what can you do? But like you said, people, there's not going to be one answer that everybody's going to be, on board with. So
yeah, we do polls and polls and polls, and in the radio stations and the TV stations, and the team does polls and everything, and nothing. 17% is like the highest that you can get because everybody sort of has a different agenda, right? Of what they think the name should be. The Red Hogs to give honor to the Hogs for the offensive line from their Super Bowl days, and Red Wolves because it's so cool and you can do things. It doesn't matter. There's nothing that we're going to go to eventually, and everyone's going to be like, perfect. Everybody loves it, and we're going to move on. It's just not going to happen. So stick with Commanders and win some football games.
Yeah. So if you had your choice, you were the owner, what would you pick?
Yeah, I liked the Washington. Oh, geez, I already forgot the name that we had, but it was Legends, the Washington Legends.
Okay.
I really liked that because, again, that honors your past. You have all of these not just the Super Bowl years of the late 80s and early 90s, but way back before the NFL was the NFL, the Washington franchise was one of the best organizations and winning championships all the time. And so you just kind of honor your entire past by calling us the Legends. And I think that would kind of fit. But, I mean, I could probably get like 4% of the vote if that was one of the options. And so that one's not going to work either.
Yeah, I get you on that one. So, all right, so that was the 2023 season.
Yeah.
You said it was a disaster. All right,
it
so
was brutal.
Yeah, dude, we're in the division. Trust me, I know. We're right there with you.
Yeah.
So going into this offseason, it was very, imperative that you guys make some good moves during this offseason. So what do you feel like was the biggest need going into this offseason, and do you feel like they addressed it via the draft and via free agency?
Well, if you're talking on the field, the obvious biggest need was the quarterback position. For the longest time, not for the longest time, for the last year, we all pretty much thought Sam Howell was going to be the guy. He was a 5th-round draft pick for a reason. He wasn't that sought after in terms of going into the draft. So it was sort of that issue, but he played his way into being what everybody thought was probably the future of Washington quarterback. But then he played his way right out in the second half of the season. So once that became apparent that Sam Howell was not going to be the guy, then it turned into who is going to be that guy. And so the biggest need in the offseason became who's going to be the quarterback. And once they ended up with the 2nd overall pick, because they were so bad, right? That's what happens when you're so bad. You have a 4-13 season, you get the 2nd overall pick. That was what they were striving for. So Jayden Daniels coming in is a massive, massive upgrade. Possibly he has the potential to be the best thing that's happened to this franchise really since RG3 in the 2012 season. It was only one season, but it was a magical season when he was here. So he has the opportunity to change the fortunes of this entire organization. But he's really not even the most important thing that happened to this organization in the offseason. The biggest thing was getting a real general manager. This team has not had a real general manager since I can't even remember when, way back when. I mean, Mike Shanahan was a general manager when he was head coach, and they bring in guys like Scott McCloughan, and then Bruce Allen goes from running the business operations to all of a sudden he's making decisions on who's going to be on this roster. Dan Snyder is coming in off his yacht and making decisions in the draft for guys like Dwayne Haskins and things like that. That was not working, obviously. And once you bring in a new ownership, and then the new ownership comes in and says, we're going to get a real general manager. They get Adam Peters from San Francisco, who's over there just doing incredible work building that team. He's responsible for most of those draft picks over there that have turned into stars, the Brandon Ayuks, the Deebo Samuels, the Fred Warners, all those guys on defense. Those are the guys that he was responsible for, only being the assistant GM, but he comes in here, changes the entire complexion of this football organization. And so now he decides who's going to be the head coach, who are going to be the scouts, who are going to be the best guys in every position, and hires Dan Quinn as the head coach for this team. So that really was the biggest thing, was getting Adam Peters in here, letting him find the guys to then find the players. And that's how we ended up with Jayden Daniels as our number 2 overall draft pick. And I think it's a fantastic pick. We started talking about it as soon as the season ended, and we said Jayden Daniels has got to be the guy, and he was. And hopefully that leads to a rookie of the year and possibly the playoffs, and we'll see what happens in 2024.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I did not want y'all to get Jayden Daniels because I think he is a fantastic player. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
we're in the division, so I don't, having to face him twice a year, I think he's got a
Sure.
lot of upside. I'm sure you
Yeah.
guys have done a lot of breakdowns on him,
Oh,
but
yeah.
he's a very explosive player. I think he has a high ceiling, but he's gonna have to learn. Rookies, it's hard for them to come into the NFL, especially at the
Oh, yeah.
quarterback position. There's a huge difference between college football and NFL. And the biggest
Big
thing
time.
is you have to throw guys open in the NFL. Guys don't just run wide open like they
That's right.
do in college. So he's got a good, he's very athletic. Like I said, got a lot of high upside. We're gonna see how it meshes, but I'm right there with you as far as the Giants did the same thing. You have to start bringing pieces from winning organizations that have good resumes. Like you guys
Mm-hmm.
bringing in a GM from San Francisco. You have to do that. Like enough with the feeding off of like these other bottom dwelling teams and bringing in their pieces. You have to
Right.
bring in guys that are proven commodities, and I feel like you guys have done that. So yeah, definitely you guys had a good offseason, especially you bringing in other guys like good free agents off the like Eckler, Austin Eckler as
Mm-hmm.
well coming in. Your roster is forming quite nicely.
The biggest difference between this offseason and past off seasons has been kind of the use of the salary cap and what they've done in terms of bringing in free agents.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't go out and get Albert Hainsworth for $100 million at 12:01 a.m. when free agency starts, like has happened in the past. They went out and they were very fiscally smart, and they went and got guys who are not stars, but who are going to hopefully become stars. So they got a guy like Tyler Biadasz, who is a center for the Cowboys.
Yep.
You hurt the Cowboys, and he's like 27 years old. He's an up and comer. He's already been to a Pro Bowl. And this is the kind of guy that you need to anchor that line when you have a rookie quarterback. Then you go get a Dorrance Armstrong from the Cowboys. Then you get a Frankie Louvu from the Panthers at linebacker who has done nothing but wow everybody in camp so far.
Bobby
And
Wagner
then
too.
what's that?
Bobby Wagner as well. You brought
But
him in
yeah,
as well.
and then they went and filled in a lot of the holes with veteran guys on 1-year deals that are going to help change the culture, going to help seal that locker room in terms of what's expected of each of those players. A Bobby Wagner, an Austin Eckler, a Zach Ertz, a Dante Fowler Jr., a Jeremy Chin. These are all proven guys who are not necessarily out there looking for the big contracts right now, but veterans that you need in that locker room. The head coach Dan Quinn and defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. and Cliff Kingsbury on the offense, they need those guys to be that conduit between the young guys and the coaching staff to be able to keep everybody on message and on point of what this team is trying to do. And Bobby Wagner is a great example of that on defense. Austin Eckler is a great, and Zach Ertz is a great example of that on offense. So they did a lot of things that are going to help this team not necessarily win this year, because Zach Ertz is past his prime. Bobby Wagner's past his prime. Austin Eckler's past his prime. So these guys aren't necessarily going to help you win a whole lot of football games this year, but they're going to set the tone for this organization for the next 3, 4, 5 years down the road, when a guy like Jayden Daniels needs a Zach Ertz, when he needs an Austin Eckler to be able to show him what it is to be a professional, show him what it is you need to do to win, how to take care of your body, how to manage things when you go on the road, all of those things. So those are hugely important veteran guys that they filled in and didn't give huge contracts to. And really the biggest point about all that, those guys wanted to come here. Those guys wanted to be in Washington, D.C., and we have not had that here for the Commanders / Washington football team / Redskins for a long, long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. When you have a young quarterback, especially when you've invested the second overall pick, you need that veteran presence to kind of teach him how to win as well. You know, you don't want a whole bunch of young. It's good to have, you know, like the situation with the Texans have, where they have a young core and they're all learning to win together. But in certain situations, you need the veteran presence, and you're going to have like Terry McLaurin, one of the best receivers in our division easily. You know what I'm saying? Austin Eckler is a proven commodity as far as a running back as well. So you guys have some good pieces that you're going to have around him. I like Cliff Kingsbury as well. So, you know, it bodes well for you guys. I think you guys are going to be much improved this year. You guys definitely made a splash this offseason. And I definitely think you guys are going to, like I said, more than 4 wins. You got what? Jayden Daniels has to. We're going to see what happens with Jayden Daniels. He should be starting day 1, but you guys should be able to get more than 4 wins this season.
Yeah, 4 wins is historically bad. It's hard to only win 4 games. It's hard to lose 8 games in a row, no matter what sport you're in. It's hard to do that when you have professionals out there trying and giving everything they got for 4 quarters. And the one thing about Ron Rivera is, you can question his ability to coach a football team, to run an offense, to run a defense, all of that. Guys would still, at the end of the year, they're still playing for him. They were still playing hard. They just were so under-talented. And by the way, just didn't have good coaching to be able to pull out games where they had Philadelphia down to the ropes on both of their games. But I mean, you can't beat Danny DeVito's brother. What was it? Tommy DeVito. I mean, you couldn't beat Tommy DeVito against the Giants. What? That's just bad coaching, because obviously the roster is much better than a Tommy DeVito-led team.
Yeah.
But they were still running through the wall for him at the end of the season. It was so bad. But make no mistake, Ace, this is not a 10, 11, 12 win football team at this point. They're not going to jump like the Texans did, where Texans went from the second overall pick to the second round of the playoffs, to a divisional playoff game. That's not going to happen with this team, but they're going to start taking steps to hopefully get there one day.
Yeah. Oh, success doesn't happen overnight. You know, not for a lot of teams. You don't get the Texans or the Chiefs story, stuff like that, where, you know, the quarterback finally pushes you over. But it's about building and stuff like that. Like, we play in a tough division too. You know, our division, it's a lot of eyes in our division, because we have 4 historic franchises. So it's a lot of pressure for him to come in. So we're going to see how he does. But I'm excited to see, you know, him throughout the season and see how he does. Because like I said, I'm a fan of Jayden Daniels. I actually wanted the Giants to, that winning, speaking of Tommy DeVito, that 3-game winning streak probably cost us Jayden Daniels. You know, so I was saying all year long, like, you know, I want Jayden Daniels if we were to get a quarterback. But then once, you know, the chips fell where they were, I'm like, you're not trading down with us. Not with the only teams that do that are the Cowboys and the Eagles that trade with each other. We don't trade with each other throughout the division to help the other team out. So
no, I got no inclination. I have no reason to trade with the Giants to help the Giants out. Nope.
Of course.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah, of course. You know, so not you know, it's to be expected. So all right, so going into the season, give me your breakout player that needs to perform well. It's kind of obvious, you know. I kind of know which way you're probably going to go. You're probably going to go Jayden Daniels, but give me yours, and then if it is Jayden, give me somebody else as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously going to be Jayden if you really think about it. He has every piece that you need for a quarterback to be successful. He has all the qualities, all the attributes, all the physical abilities to be a fantastic quarterback. He has everything that he needs, and he has weapons around him. So the only thing that's probably going to hold him back could be, and this was the knock against him for the longest time, is his size. He's a little undersized in terms of his frame. He's not a thick, sturdy guy. But plenty of guys have been able to be successful in the NFL, at his size. So it can be done, but we just have to watch out for that. That's really the only thing that's going to hold him back. He has no other weaknesses. He understands defenses. He's great at listening to coaching, all of that. So, but that's an obvious one, right?
Yeah.
Here's who you need to watch out for.
Okay.
And that is defensive end Dorrance Armstrong, who came over from the Cowboys, signed a 3-year deal here. He's kind of been a player that's been right on the edge of breaking out. But the Cowboys have had a fantastic defensive ends, especially when they put Micah Parsons up there. It's kind of stunted his growth. And that's why he wanted to get out of there, and he wanted to go somewhere where he can play 75, 80% of the snaps, which he was not doing in Dallas. So now here in Washington, he has free reign. Joe Witt Jr. also, by the way, came from Dallas. Dan Quinn came from Dallas. Dorrance Armstrong came from Dallas. Dante Fowler Jr. came from Dallas. And if you look at the Cowboys' defense last year, they're a fantastic defense. Struggled in the playoffs, understood. But during the season, Micah Parsons was all over the place. Their defense was just fantastic. And these are some of the guys who are now coming over here because they believe in Dan Quinn and they believe in Joe Witt Jr. and they think they can be very successful. So watch out for him coming off the edge with this organization. Chase Young's gone. Montez Sweat is gone. So he's going to have every opportunity to eat up all the time and all of those sacks that those guys were supposed to get that didn't really get, Montez and Chase. But he's going to be the guy. So that's my breakout guy to keep an eye out on is Dorrance Armstrong Jr.
Yeah. I was going to say, also a lot of pressure on Jonathan Allen this year to perform for you guys, being that, like you said, Chase Young is gone. It's going to be some pressure on him because you guys in past years invested a lot of money, a lot of high draft picks in that defensive line. And then, to see some of them go away is something that's going to have to step up. So that actually brings me to my next question. Strengths and weaknesses for the team.
Yeah. I mean, the strengths are the defensive interior when you have those guys. First of all, you've got the Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. Those are two of the higher paid defensive tackles in the entire NFL, but worth it. They're excellent players. They stop the run. They're good at getting to the quarterback. They haven't had a lot of help in previous years, especially in the linebacker position. So keep an eye on those two. You have a backup there and another guy that they got from the Cowboys a couple of years ago. Name is escaping me, but he's a I don't want to say a BA. I don't want to make any curse words on your channel, but he's a bad MFer, right? And Ridgeway is who I'm thinking of. And then 2 years ago, they drafted Fedarian Mathis out of Alabama in the second round. He's been hurt for the first 2 years, so hoping he finally kind of gets over that hump. And then they drafted Johnny Newton this year out of Illinois, who was Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten. Absolute stud. Got him in the second round. He fell a little bit because of some injuries, even though he played all year long. He played with a couple of foot injuries. He's already had a surgery. He missed all of OTAs and minicamp and all that, but he was there, but he just wasn't participating. That's 5 stud defensive tackles that they have on this team. And then you do have the Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler Jr., and they brought in Cleveland Farrell, another defensive end from the Raiders, who was a number 3 or number 4 overall pick a few years ago. Although he's been a disappointment, he's got a new chance here in Washington. That's the strength of this team. Defensive line, it has been for the longest time that's been the strength. And then you go right to the other side of the ball. Offensive line is their weakness. It has been for quite some time, and they didn't do a whole lot to address it. That's the only problem I've had with this Commanders offseason is they did not address the 2 tackle positions. At left tackle has been Charles Leno. He's been there for, I want to say 3 years that he's basically been there every game. He's been okay, right? He hasn't been great. We had Trent Williams, so we were a little spoiled there for a long time. And then over on the right side is Andrew Wiley, who came over from the Chiefs after they won their first of their 2 consecutive Super Bowls. He wasn't very good last year either. And that's Charles Leno retired, right? And so now you've got a guy they drafted in the 4th round as a potential replacement in Brandon Coleman, or you've got Cornelius Lucas, who has been a swing tackle with this team for the last few years. He's a backup for a reason. That's who's going to fight for your left tackle position. The left tackle who's going to protect your number 2 overall draft pick's blind side.
You don't got to tell me. I know.
You know,
our
right?
team, our teams are made up
up
so similar. Like strengths, defensive line, weaknesses,
That's
biggest
right.
question mark, offensive line. Like, dude, trust me, I know. We know we play each other twice a year.
Yeah.
I'm actually okay with you guys not ramping up the offensive line because that means
Yeah.
Kayvon Thibodeau can continue to come off the edge like he did. He seems to wreck you guys, but you need a left tackle in this league. Like, hey, if you want Evan Neal, we can give you Evan Neal moving back to the right, to the left. But yeah, I'm right there with you. You have to, especially in our division. Our division, you have 2 teams in the Cowboys and Eagles that have really good offensive lines.
That's right.
And then you have our teams that can't seem to find, no matter how much we invest in the offensive line, it's like we keep swinging and missing. We have Andrew Thomas, which is great. You guys had Trent Williams for a long time, which he was great as well. But it just seems like, guys don't pan out. And I do think that offensive line is probably the hardest position in football.
Yeah.
Outside of the second would be cornerback, defensive back, because like I say all the time, you can be holding your guy for 90% of the snaps, but that one time that you let him go can be huge for your team in a huge situation. So it's tough.
Yeah, it's been tough for me to watch this, and I've watched all of the moves that Adam Peters from the general manager position has made during this offseason, and I've loved all of the moves. I loved their draft. I didn't like the second round. I didn't like Johnny Newton in the second round, the defensive tackle, even though he's a stud. That's where I thought they should have got an offensive tackle. They just couldn't pass up the talent of a guy who had fallen, who was supposed to be a top 15 first rounder in that draft and fell all the way, and they couldn't pass him up because he was such a great value. But in the meantime, you missed out on
best player available.
Yeah. And I'm not a best player available guy. I'm a draft for need guy. And so I thought in the second round they should have drafted an offensive tackle, a stud offensive tackle, or moved back into the first round to get an offensive tackle, whatever. That's an important position. My guys on the show, Nathan and Trev, we argue back and forth of what's the most important position on a football team outside of quarterback.
Left tackle.
I say it's left tackle.
It is left tackle.
They both say that it's your edge rusher. And it's kind of right along the same things, right?
I think that's third. I do think that's third because
but if you don't have a left tackle, then that edge rusher is going to wreak havoc on your team.
Yeah,
but the other way around, that if you don't have an edge rusher, then your left tackle can be kind of average.
Of course. And you guys, investing the second overall pick in a quarterback, you need him upright. Yeah. Quarterbacks can't do their jobs if they're laying on their backs, which is why you need a good left. I'm right there with you. I agree. I agree right there with you. Quarterback, left tackle, defensive end are the order of what you kind of need. Like you need a good, left tackle, unless you're like Tua, then you need a right tackle, so that type of stuff.
That's right.
But, you guys have to, if not this year, well, obviously we'll see if some of your guys are able to pan out with development, because development is one thing too. Offensive line is a hard position. It's a man's game down there. You know what I'm saying? Like the men, you separate the men from the boys down there. So it also takes time to learn that position and learn certain schemes. And that's where good offensive line coaching can come into play as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Coaching is huge, especially at the offensive line, like you said. But having the players, no matter what, the players are always going to be the difference between being a good offensive line and a bad offensive line. Look, since the dawn of football, offensive lines have been the most important part of a football team. Back when they were running the wing T, and when they were running fullbacks, and when they were running 75, 85% of the time, it doesn't matter. Even to this day, Patrick Mahomes needs a good offensive line. Oh, yeah. Patrick Mahomes can overcome some deficiencies of an offensive line, but he's special. Yep. But he still needs that offensive line. And guys like Jalen Hurts needed that offensive line to make him better when he was developing into the quarterback that he is now. Every team needs a good offensive line, and we tend to overlook it. We like the stars. We like
It's
the
not
playmakers.
it's
We
not the
like the
sexiest pick. It's really not.
right. They're
But
not
it's what you
sexy.
need to win. It's not, but what you
You
need to win.
need it.
You
And
need the
so it's
fat boys
driven
down
me
there.
crazy this offseason. All the great moves that I've watched our front office do is that the one thing that they have overlooked is the left tackle. And that could come to bite this team in the butt down somewhere in the middle of the season when Jayden Daniels gets crunched by a 280-pound Kayvon Thibodeau on his backside. And next thing you know, Marcus Mariota is starting games and the season has become a disaster again.
Yeah, that's the last thing you guys need, and it's not good for football either. You want to see the young kids kind of play in there. Some of the rules have helped, the quarterbacks, what I'm saying, as far as not landing on them, but still,
Yeah.
it's a physical game. You guys get hurt all the time because they can't get protected, and it's difficult. Both of us know it's difficult when your quarterback can't even complete a 3-step drop and he's got somebody in his face. How are you supposed to, especially for a young guy that has to go through his progressions? You can't just, because then teams are going to sit on your first look if they know you can't block, and then that's when the turnovers are going to come and stuff like that. Like to your point of Patrick Mahomes, Jayden Daniels is athletic enough to kind of overcome bad offensive line play to an extent. It's not going to be every time. Sometimes you might have step in the pocket. What I would like to see from him is step up in the pocket, run, like sort of like Aaron Rodgers-esque. Be mobile to throw instead of just relying on just your legs. The legs should be an added bonus, but move around in the pocket to kind of let things develop down the field.
And I think that's what this offensive staff is looking for with Jayden Daniels. They don't want him to be Lamar Jackson. They don't want him to be a check your reads, okay, go, and then he's gone. Now that's special. I love Lamar Jackson. He's a 2-time MVP. I think he's a 2-time. Maybe it's just the one, but he's special in that he can do that. But you don't necessarily want that all the time in your quarterback. You want your quarterback to get out of that pocket when he has to, but continue to look downfield a la Patrick Mahomes. Everyone's trying to find the next Patrick Mahomes, which is great. And hopefully Jayden Daniels is the next Patrick Mahomes type quarterback to where he can move around in that pocket, manipulate the pocket, get outside, make plays outside the pocket, and win some games that way. I don't necessarily want to see him just going back, checking his reads, and then taking off. I don't want to see that because even though he's special at that, Jayden Daniels is special at that, I don't necessarily want to see that. I want to see him throwing when he drops back to throw rather than running too much.
Yeah. And you also have a good safety blanket in Austin Eckler as well, who's a good pass catching back.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a every down back where he can be out there if third and long, you drop back pressures in your face. The first thing I look for is dumping it down to Austin, maybe throwing a lot of screens, a lot of running back in the flat type stuff, stuff like that. Because receiving course is decent, Terry McLaurin's good, but like I said, Austin Eckler is dynamic enough that he's exactly what you kind of need for a young quarterback.
Eckler and Zach Ertz at your tight end position. Those are your young quarterbacks' two best friends are a pass catching running back and a tight end, a veteran tight end who knows where to go to find those open holes in the zones. So hopefully those two are really going to help Jayden develop.
Yeah. Like I said, it sucks to say this, but I'm kind of rooting for the kid. I like Jayden Daniels, but rooting for him like anytime, just not against the Giants.
That's right. So you can root for him 15 times a year, but those two other times, you hope he is terrible. Throws up all of himself.
Beat the shit out of the Eagles and Cowboys. Do what you got to do because you guys play the Eagles tough every time, but like you had said earlier, it's just you just can't get over that hump. But the games are always close. So
that's probably coaching right there. But hopefully now we have the coaching that can get us over that hump on those close games.
Yeah. All right. So the last question I have for you, give me your realistic expectations and give me your record for the 2024 season because I'm looking at your schedule, 18th strength of schedule, which is towards the end of the middle bottom tier. So 18th strength of schedule. You guys are obviously playing a 4th place schedule this year. Realistic expectations and record.
Yeah, I think realistically, and I'm really the only realistic guy on our show on Ref the District.
Shots
the other
fired.
two guys are, they're out there. One guy is 17-0 until proven otherwise, right? And that's what Nathan loves to say. And Trev, when we go through the all the different games, he'll be like, "Oh, we're beating the Chiefs at home. Come on, we can handle them. We
Yeah.
can, a little bit crazy." But I'm more the realistic guy, and I look at that, and I just kind of look at the team and Jayden Daniels and all this stuff. This is a building block type season. This is not a we're going to win 10, 11, 12 games and start talking about playoffs and second round and all that other stuff. This is realistically a team that could possibly double their win total. And if they double their win total from the year before, that's a massive success for this organization. So that would mean winning 8 games. So an 8-9 type season, I think, is what they're in for. But more than that, more than wins and losses, this season is all going to be about the development of Jayden Daniels.
Yep.
If he develops the way we expect him to, the way we hope him to, the record almost doesn't matter. Because then next year you can start bringing in even more talent, bringing in a left tackle, bringing in possibly a dynamic receiver on top of McLaurin and Dotson. Guys like that, situations like that is where this team needs to go. My realistic expectation is somewhere around 7 or 8 wins this year. And I think that would be successful, assuming that Jayden Daniels plays 15 to 17 games health-wise and shows us that, yeah, this is the guy, and we just need to build around him.
Yeah. What stat line would you like to see for? Give me a ballpark estimate of what stat line you'd like to see for Jayden Daniels for you to consider, okay, this was a good season that we can build on. What would you like to see?
Yeah,
Yards, touchdowns, interceptions, like give me that.
I think if he gets over 3,500 yards, which is a big number, if he can get over around 3,500, just over that in terms of yards, assuming, let's just say he plays all 17 games.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Yeah, if he plays.
Yeah, so that's the biggest one. 17. That's the number that I want to see. I want to see him play every single game. So 3,500 yards. If he can get us into the low to mid 20s in touchdowns, throwing the ball, let's say 23 touchdowns. If he can get us there, and if he can stay away from double-digit interceptions, if he can stay around 8, 9 interceptions, maybe even 10, that to me would be an excellent season for Jayden Daniels. If he can add a couple of more running the ball, 2 to 3 rushing touchdowns, so he has somewhere in the mid 20s for his touchdowns and right around 10 for his turnovers, I think that would be the type of year that you're looking for. But more than anything, you know what, Ace? It really is the eye test.
Yeah.
If you're watching it and you see it, then you know that this guy is the guy we're going to build around for the next 8 to 10 years. But if you see it at some point and you say, he just doesn't have it. He's just not the guy, and that's disappointing. He could have 27 touchdowns and 7 picks, but you could watch and you can just say, I see so many flaws that he just overcame with maybe Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is a quarterback's best friend in terms of stats. He's a guy, 50-50 balls, he wins them all, and he can make your quarterback stats look really good. If that's what's going on around here, or if he's dumping it off to Austin Eckler 6 yards behind the line, and Austin Eckler goes 64 yards for a touchdown, and all those stats go to Jayden Daniels,
easy stats.
That's the eye test when you say, well, sure, he was 1 for 1 for 64 yards and a touchdown, but he didn't do anything. He threw it behind the line, and Austin Eckler did the rest. That's how you know. So there are stat numbers that you want to see, but really is the eye test for me in terms of what I will think at the end of the year if he's the guy or not.
Yeah, of course. You want to see how he progresses game after game.
Absolutely.
How he goes through his progressions. You know what I'm saying? I mean, even the dump offs to like Austin Eckler, I'll take that if it's a smart play. If you have like no body open and you're just doing that and Eckler breaks it open, that's a great play. You know what I'm saying? That's a veteran type play. Tom Brady made a living off that.
Oh, so, absolutely, dude.
Hey, it is what it is. That's the NFL. But look, man, I appreciate you for coming on, man. First time meeting. Like I said, would love to have you on the channel again. This season, whenever the Yankees aren't playing, we'll be debuting this year the Battle of the Giants segment that I will be doing while we're bringing on the opposing team for the week. Would love to have you come on as like a little game type preview, man. You were amazing. You're very informative on your team, and it seems like you have a really good thing going over there. Tell the people where they can find you at and what to expect from your channel.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ace. We have a lot of fun on our channel. We've been around since 2021. Myself and Nathan go way back to 2009, 2010, where we worked together in Germany, and then we got back together here in the States and started Ref the District. Brought in Trev a few months later, and we have a great time on our show. We have a lot of good information, but more than that, we have a lot of fun. We're live every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And we do all kinds of additional content, especially during the NFL season. We cover the Wizards, the Nats, and the Caps as well. Only a little bit, though, because everybody knows that NFL drives ratings
Oh, yeah.
everywhere. But during the season, we do a play-by-play like you do with the Yankees. We do a game day play-by-play. We have an instant reaction. We have the next day called the day after reckoning. We do game previews like you've talking about. We get players, coaches, all that stuff on our channel. We have a blast, and appreciate you having me on. Sorry we couldn't have the whole squad here. It's a little difficult in the off season. Once the season starts, we're there. We're locked in for the Commanders because we love this team, and we hope that we finally turn the corner, and we're going to be on it every single day when training camp starts over on Ref the District. And you can find us on all the socials at Ref the District, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. We're even on Twitch for game day play-by-play if you want to check us out there. So appreciate you having us on. And yeah, really love your channel, what you're doing. I'm glad you're doing it because we need more good content creators out
Appreciate
there.
that.
And what you're doing is fantastic. I've seen a lot of your stuff. So keep on doing it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. And if by some chance they change their name to the Washington Legends, you heard it
Yeah.
here first.
Oh, yeah.
So
Right
you got to
here.
give Stoner some credit on that one and go over there and like and subscribe. But look, appreciate you for coming on, man. Appreciate everybody for watching. The behind the teams is in full effect, getting some more teams on, getting some more content creators, just like my man over here on here to talk about their favorite football teams. Appreciate you guys. Like and subscribe to both channels. You guys are the best. But as always, thank you for tuning into the Ace Avenue. I am yours truly, the Ace. Adios.